The galaxy was wide and full of light. It held millions of stars and thousands of worlds. Some of those worlds were peaceful, some were dangerous, and some were controlled by empires that ruled with fear. The Zoreth Dominion was one of those empires. The Zoreth were strong, cold, and proud. They believed they were better than all other species. They ruled with metal fists, heavy ships, and sharp laws. To them, power was everything, and kindness was weakness. They thought they could do anything they wanted, without anyone stopping them. One of the places they had always wanted was a rocky planet called Daxil 4. This planet had no cities, no green fields, and no oceans. It was mostly dust and stone. But deep under the surface, the rocks held rare metals that could power great machines and fast ships. For that reason, humans had built a mining colony there. They sent workers, engineers, builders, and families to live and work on the hard planet. It was not a perfect place, but it was quiet. It was home to those who lived there. People mined the rocks and sent the metals back to Earth and its allies. Life was simple but honest. The Zoreth had watched the human colony grow. At first, they said nothing. They saw the small human machines and laughed. They saw children playing near the mining site and ignored them. The Zoreth believed Daxil 4 was too small to care about, but something changed. The metals the humans were digging became important. The minerals were rare in that part of space. Other alien species wanted to buy them, and that made the Zoreth angry. They no longer saw the humans as small and weak. They saw them as a threat. Not because of weapons or soldiers, but because of success. So one day, without warning, a fleet of Zoreth warships appeared in the sky above Daxil 4. They came without sending any message. Their ships were dark and fast. They blocked the sun. The humans looked up and felt afraid. They had no warships. They had no defense. They had drills and hammers, not missiles and guns. They did not know what the Zoreth wanted, but they had no time to prepare. The Zoreth landed outside the colony. Their soldiers marched in lines. They wore thick black armor and carried bright weapons. Their leader did not speak to the humans. He simply pointed. 10 people were taken. 10 humans were pulled from their homes and workstations. The people screamed, but the soldiers did not listen. They picked men and women, young and old, without saying why. They did not explain. They did not accuse anyone of a crime. They just acted. The people of the colony stood together, confused and scared. They begged the Zoreth to stop, but the soldiers had no feelings. They pushed forward, cold and quiet. The 10 humans were dragged to a dry place outside the main camp. The sun was hot. The ground was rough. No one was told what would happen next. Then, without trial or warning, the soldiers raised their weapons. A loud sound followed. It echoed across the valley. Dust flew in the air. And just like that, the 10 humans were gone. Their bodies fell in silence. The wind moved across the sand, trying to hide what had happened. The soldiers turned and walked away. There were no cameras. There were no names written down. It was meant to be forgotten. But it was not. The humans who remained were shocked. They had seen something they would never forget. They quickly sent out a signal. It was weak and full of static, but it reached a passing ship. That ship sent the message to Earth. At first, only a few people saw it. Then the message spread. The people of Earth were heartbroken. These 10 had not been soldiers. They were workers and family members. They were normal people. One had been a father who baked bread every morning. Another was a young woman who repaired the machines when they broke. A boy of 15 was taken. He had just started working next to his mother in the mining zone. A nurse who always helped others, a quiet man who read books every night, and a girl who sang songs to make others smile. Each of them had lived a simple life. Now, their lives were gone. Back on Earth, news channels showed their faces. Families cried. Friends mourned. Teachers, students, and workers across the planet stopped to remember them. Statues were built. Flowers were placed at monuments. Their names were whispered across stations, moon bases, and colonies. People gathered in groups to light candles and pray. But while the humans remembered with sadness, something else began to grow. It was not just grief. It was something sharper, something colder. It was anger. Quiet, still, deep anger. The leaders of Earth met in silence. No shouting, no talking to cameras, just plans. They were not meeting to argue. They were not there to make speeches. They were there to understand what had happened and to make sure it would never happen again. The galaxy saw what the Zorath had done. Many alien nations heard the news. Some said nothing. Some looked away. Some were afraid. The Zorath were powerful. No one wanted to challenge them, but Earth was different. Humans do not always move fast, but when something changes their hearts, they do not forget. They may seem quiet, but their minds stay sharp. And when someone hurts their own, they do not stand back. They move forward, slowly, strongly, and together. The Zorath thought the story would end with silence. They believed that no one would stand against them, but they were wrong, very wrong. On every human world, the 10 were remembered. Schools taught their stories. Artists painted their faces. On Mars, a garden was built with 10 stones in a circle. People came to see it. They came from far and near. They brought notes, songs, and small gifts. Some cried. Some stood in silence, but all remembered. Even the children felt the change. They asked their parents, "Why did this happen?" And parents told them, "Because some forget that we are all human, but we will make sure the galaxy remembers." In space, human ships started to change their paths. Satellites turned their cameras. Secret teams began collecting data. The names of the Zorath soldiers were gathered. The name of the commander was placed on a list. The humans did not scream. They did not strike back right away, but they began to prepare, not for revenge but for justice. The 10 people who were taken had no idea that they would start something so big, but they did. Their loss became a spark, and that spark lit a fire that would not go out. The Zorath believed they had won. They thought power came from fear. They believed that silence meant weakness. They did not know the truth. Because when humans go quiet, it is not because they are scared. It is because they are planning. When humans grieve, it is not the end. It is the beginning. The Zorath saw 10 bodies in the sand, but they could not see what had begun. What they had done on Daxil 4 would not be forgotten. Earth was listening. Earth was remembering. And Earth was waking up. When 10 people died on Daxil 4, it didn't just end their lives. It broke something in the hearts of others. Those 10 humans were not just workers or strangers in a far-off mining colony. They were sons, daughters, friends, and neighbors. Each one had someone waiting for them. Each one had someone who smiled when they walked in the room, and each one had someone who, after hearing the news, stood in stunned silence, asking, "Why them?" One of the 10 was named Elira. She was 26 years old and had bright eyes that always looked curious. Elira had grown up on a science ship near Saturn. Her older brother, Dr. Andon Vall, was a famous engineer who helped design ships that could fly faster than light. He had always called Elira his little star. When she moved to Daxil 4 to help run power systems for the miners, Andon had sent her a bracelet with her name and the words, "Shine bright." Every week they spoke over a long-distance signal. The day she was taken, Andon was waiting for her message. It never came. When he found out what had happened, he didn't speak for hours. Then he walked into his lab, locked the door, and began building something no one had seen before. Another was named Toma. He had a deep voice and always helped others. Toma worked in the water plant on Daxil 4. He made sure clean water reached every home and worker's station. Toma was married to a pilot named Captain Riaya Lorne. She flew patrol missions near the edge of the solar defense zone. Riaya had served in the Earth Space Guard for 10 years. She had fought pirates, storms, and rogue machines. But she had never cried like she did when she saw Toma's name in the report. Her shipmates said nothing as she placed a single flower on her dashboard and turned her ship toward home. Then there was Jonas, a young man who loved reading. He was shy and quiet but always kind. He worked nights sorting metals in the loading bay. His mother, Commander Lucina Grant, was in charge of Earth's orbital security network. She had built systems that could track objects across half the galaxy. Jonas had never told people who his mother was. He didn't want special treatment. When Lucina got the message, she didn't tell anyone at first. She stood in her office, staring at the stars outside the window. Then she turned around, picked up a secure phone, and called a meeting no one else knew about. Not all the 10 were linked to leaders or officers. Some were loved by people who built things, who cared for others, who sang songs in small places far from fame or power. One woman, Mia, had a daughter named Taylor who lived on a farming station near Mars. Every night, Mia would send her daughter a voice message with stories of the rocks and tunnels and what she had seen that day. She always ended her message with, "I miss you more than all the stars." Taylor, only 10 years old, listened to the last message every night after Mia was gone. She couldn't understand why someone would take her mother away. But she promised herself she would grow up strong and do something big, something her mother would be proud of. Another man, Cole, worked with the mining machines. He had scars on his hands and a laugh that made others smile. He had a best friend named Jarun, who was a mechanic on Titan's ice base. When Jarun heard that Cole was one of the 10, he took a leave from work and flew back to Earth. He didn't speak to reporters. He didn't post messages online. He just went to Cole's old home and fixed everything that was broken. Then he built a bench in the backyard with a small plaque, for the friend who could fix anything except unfairness. One of the youngest, Lyra, had just turned 17. She was working on Daxil 4 during her summer break. She wanted to save money for her art school. Lyra loved painting stars and drawing new kinds of ships. Her father, Dalen, was a quiet man who made glass windows for space domes. He had given her a sketchbook when she left for the colony. After she was taken, he placed that sketchbook inside a clear glass box and put it near the largest window he had ever made. When the sun rose, it hit the glass and the drawings lit up like fire. People from nearby cities came to see it. Many left in tears. There was also Jin, a cook who made food for the miners every day. He wasn't famous, but he was loved. People said his soups made bad days feel better. He would hum while he cooked, always with a towel over his shoulder. His sister, Elena, was a tech builder. She created smart farming tools used across the galaxy. When she learned her brother was gone, she built a tiny robot shaped like a spoon that could stir soup and play his favorite songs. She sent it to every kitchen on every human colony. They called it Jin's memory. Another Farin had only been on Daxil 4 for a month. He wanted to learn about rocks and minerals. He had always liked science. Farin had a boyfriend, Cade, who worked on a science post near Neptune. When Cade read Farin's name, he sat still for a long time. Then he went to the lab and started a research file named Farin's Planet. It would be a project to study Daxil 4 and make sure it was never forgotten. The ninth person, Amra, was a nurse. She had helped almost every person in the colony at least once. Amra never asked for praise. She just showed up, helped, and moved on. Her brother, Sauron, was a musician who played songs in spaceports. He wrote a new song with only one line. She gave more than she ever got. The song was played in 50 stations, and people stopped to listen, many with tears in their eyes. And finally, there was Tom. No one knew much about him. He didn't speak often. He worked at night. But after he was gone, people began to share stories. He had fixed lights without being asked. He had left tools behind for others to use. He had written poems and hidden them in empty lunch boxes to make others smile. A miner found one the day after the attack. It said, "Even in dark tunnels, the stars wait for you." Each of these 10 humans had a story. Each one mattered to someone. The Zoroath didn't ask their names. They didn't care about their dreams, their families, or their kindness. They thought humans were just a group, nothing special. But they were wrong. When the news spread across Earth and her colonies, it wasn't just the pain that echoed. It was the memories. People shared what they remembered about each person. On message boards, in public halls, and inside quiet homes, stories were told. Stories of laughter, help, hard work, and love. No one was forgotten. More than that, some of the people who loved the 10 were not just anyone. They were thinkers, makers, planners, and leaders. The Zoroath didn't know that. They thought they had taken nameless faces, but instead they had taken a sister, a brother, a best friend, a student, and a nurse. They had taken people who had touched important lives, lives that now would not rest until justice was found. One of the world's best hackers had grown up with one of the victims. She quietly began mapping the Zoroath data systems. One of Earth's top translators, who once taught 2 of the victims, started working on decoding Zoroath military symbols. On the moon base, a space pilot whose cousin had been taken canceled her vacation and returned to duty early. She said she didn't want medals. She just wanted answers. It was not only people in high places. A teacher on a Mars school told her class about Elira, the young woman who used to ask hard questions and draw planets in her notebook. A baker on Europa made 10 loaves of bread and gave them away for free in memory of Toma. A gardener planted 10 trees in a circle and left a note that read, "So they can still breathe in our world." The Zoroath thought they had ended something, but they had started something much bigger. They had touched people who were deeply connected to others. The pain spread, and so did the resolve. Humans began to see not just 10 losses, but 10 reasons to stand up. Across colonies and stations, people began to wear stars on their shirts, not for decoration but for remembrance. One star for each life, 10 stars always shining. The Zarath could not see this part. They could not feel it, but it was real as stone and fire. The 10 were gone from Daxil 4, but they had entered something stronger than life, the human spirit. They had names. They had people who loved them. And now they had a galaxy that would never forget. At first there was silence. After the 10 were gone, no one from Earth spoke to the Zarath Dominion. No leaders gave speeches. No ships moved in anger. There were no big warnings, no flashing lights, no shouting on the news. But silence doesn't always mean nothing is happening. Sometimes it means something is building, slowly, quietly, deep beneath the surface. On the second moon of Jupiter, a small research ship called the Snowbird went missing. It didn't send a distress call. There were no signs of damage or attack. One day it was there. The next day it was gone. People whispered, maybe pirates took it, or maybe it hit an asteroid. But those who knew better said nothing. They just looked at the last known location. It was near a path the Zarath used for transporting supplies. Then a space station in a trade zone called Murax 12 shut down. It happened fast. All the power went out. The doors locked. The gravity system failed, leaving people floating. The only clue was a blinking red light that repeated the same message. Do not forget Daxil 4. The Zorath called it a random glitch. But the humans who worked on Murax 12 had questions. Someone had gotten into the system, and that someone was careful, fast, and impossible to trace. Not long after, a patrol ship from the Zorath fleet tried to pass near Earth's outer defense zone. It sent a regular signal and expected a simple check. But the ship never made it through. No missiles fired. No weapons were used. The ship was found later, drifting in space. Its engines were offline. Its fuel was gone. Every screen on board was filled with one sentence: "We remember the 10." These were just the beginning. Each event looked small on its own: a missing ship, a silent station, a floating patrol vessel. But when you looked closer, a pattern began to show. Nothing was being taken at random. The targets all had something to do with the Zarath, their ships, their allies, their trade paths. Someone was picking them apart piece by piece. The Zarath leaders laughed at first. They thought humans were being emotional, weak, or foolish. "Let them play their little tricks," one of their generals said. "It doesn't matter." But deep inside Earth's command centers, humans were not playing games. They were planning. They were watching every move the Zarath made. They were testing how far they could go without being noticed. And they were learning fast. One day, a cargo shipment of fuel for the Zarath was delayed. Then it disappeared. The Zarath blamed rebels. But when they searched, they found nothing. All they discovered was a small sticker left behind on an empty crate. It had 10 stars and a name written below each one. The names of the humans who had died. Even in deep space, near the edge of known territory, strange things began to happen. A storage unit full of mining tools vanished. A satellite belonging to a Zarath colony was taken over and started playing human music. The song it played was called We will not sleep. No one knew who had done it, but every time something went wrong, a star-shaped symbol showed up somewhere in the system. The Zorath started to worry, not out loud but in their meetings. Their trade was slowing. Their allies were asking questions. Their maps had holes where things used to be. They checked their records again and again. Why was this happening? Why now? What they didn't understand was that humans were not attacking like a normal army. They weren't using big ships or giant bombs. They were using skill, memory, and patience. Earth had hundreds of stations, thousands of workers, and millions of minds. Each one had a reason to fight now, not just for power, but for justice. A young human code runner named Vi had lost her cousin on Daxil 4. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She simply logged into her system and began tracing Zorath messages. After weeks of work, she found a hidden line of code in one of their defense grids. She used it to open a small door in their shields. She didn't use it. Not yet. She just left it open, like a window waiting for the wind. On a farming ship in orbit around Neptune, an engineer named Roz was testing new drone systems. She had known one of the miners who died. So instead of testing crops, she programmed the drones to fly toward Zorath stations. They didn't carry weapons, but they broadcasted one simple message in every Zorath language. Your time will end as silently as theirs did. Everywhere, people began doing small things. A pilot paused during a flight and delayed a Zorath shipment. A cleaner working near a fuel port spilled just enough liquid to stop a transport. A group of space students hacked a scoreboard during a match and showed the 10 faces of the victims. People saw. People remembered. Still, there was no war. No battles had started, but the Zorath were now unsure. They held their meetings longer. Their leaders asked more questions. They told their workers to double-check systems, to watch for anything strange. They began to tighten their rules, but it didn't stop the quiet wave moving against them. One day, a shipment of rare metals for the Zorath was found frozen inside a comet's trail. No one knew how it got there. It was too far off course to be an accident. A note was left behind, written in glowing letters. Not lost, removed. The Zorath were proud and powerful, but they were not used to being questioned. Their rule had gone unchallenged for many years, but now their control was slipping, not because of giant armies, but because of many small hands working in the shadows. Each hand was holding a memory. Each action was made not with rage, but with a quiet promise. This will not go unanswered. Even animals were part of the change. On a small moon base where the Zorath kept research labs, someone released a group of Earth birds, colorful, noisy, and fast. They flew through the halls, knocking over devices and tripping alarms. When the Zorath guards arrived, they found feathers and a note that said, "Freedom spreads." The more the Zorath tried to stop the strange events, the more they found nothing. No signs, no faces, just messages. Messages that made them remember the 10. Messages that made them wonder what might come next. In space, near a trade zone, a large Zorath ship began to spin slowly. Its controls had been changed. Its direction was now pointed away from the trade route. The ship was not damaged, but it could not turn back. A human flag appeared on its screen with the words, "We steer now." On Earth, the people still didn't shout. They didn't celebrate, but in quiet ways they shared smiles. They read updates. They saw the changes. They knew that something had begun. A new kind of war, not made of battles, but of balance, not full of rage, but full of purpose. And so Earth began to change too. Factories started building new tools. Schools added new classes on Zorath history. Young people studied languages and codes. Artists made paintings of the Ten. Builders added stars to every doorway. Every spaceport had a wall called the Ten. Travelers touched the wall before leaving. Nothing the Zorath had done was forgotten. Every ship that moved, every station that changed, every plan that failed. These were quiet footsteps leading to something larger. Back in deep space, on a quiet satellite that once belonged to the Zorath, a message was found blinking on a silent screen. It said, "You cannot see us yet. You do not hear us yet. But we are here. And we remember." This was how it began. Not with a battle, not with fire, but with whispers in the wires, with quiet hands, with slow, careful steps. Humans did not shout, they moved, and every move counted. The Zorath Dominion had taken 10 lives, 10 lights. They thought the world would forget, but instead those 10 became 10,000 reasons to begin, and the beginning had only just started. For a long time the Zorath Dominion thought humans were weak. They believed Earth was small and easy to ignore. They thought that once the 10 were gone, people would move on. But the quiet strikes had begun. Something was changing, and now the Zorath could feel it. It started with a simple report. A clerk on a transport station noticed that fuel logs were not matching up. 10 barrels were missing. He checked the numbers again. Still wrong. So he told his manager, who told another officer. That officer ignored it. "It's just a mistake," he said. But the next day, another station lost 20 barrels, then another, then 50. None were taken at once, but over many weeks, fuel vanished from everywhere. The Zorath kept saying it was human error, but there was a pattern, and some leaders were beginning to notice. A general named Varash was one of the first to speak up. He was old and had served in many wars. He didn't trust easy answers. He looked at the lost ships, the silent systems, and the strange messages. He saw that they were all connected. "This is not a game," Varash said to the council. "These humans are not just crying, they are planning." But the others laughed. They thought Varash was being dramatic. "We are the Dominion," one said. "Let them play with machines, they will tire out." But Varash didn't smile. He saw something in the shadows, and it made his skin crawl. Soon more reports arrived. A station deep in Zorath space lost control of its lights. They flickered on and off for hours. Nothing else was touched. But at the end of the day, one word blinked on the main screen: "Watch." On another ship, the food system began to play music from Earth. The song was soft, like a lullaby. It played every hour, even after engineers tried to stop it. No damage, no noise, just that same song. It made the crew feel uneasy. Who had put it there? How did they get in? The Zorath tried to cover it up. They told their people it was just a joke or a small hack. But inside their meetings, they were growing nervous. More people were asking questions. How could humans touch systems from so far away? How could they reach deep into Zorath space? A science officer named Kyle brought forward maps. She showed how the attacks were spreading. They're not random, she said. They form a shape, a path. They are heading somewhere. The room grew quiet. One leader whispered, "Heading where?" Kyle circled a point on the map. "Here," she said, "to our home system." That was the moment when laughter stopped. That was when everyone looked at each other and realized something big was coming. The Zorath had always believed they were stronger. Their ships were larger. Their weapons were faster. Their systems were older and wider. But something was wrong. None of their tools could stop what was happening. It felt like water slipping through their fingers. To make things worse, messages from other races began to arrive. One by one, allies asked the same question. What is happening with the humans? Some even blamed the Zorath. Others pulled back from deals and trade. Fear was spreading and the Zorath were losing respect. Back at command, General Varash stood in front of the Grand Council once more. This time they listened. "They are not attacking like us," he said. "They do not need guns. They use brains, not bombs. They use memory, not missiles." One young leader raised his hand. "So what do we do?" "Prepare," said Varash, "before it's too late." They sent more guards to the trade routes. They built firewalls around their systems. They told workers to double-check everything. But it didn't help. The humans stayed one step ahead. A few days later, something strange happened at the main Zorath bank in the core system. The lights turned red. Alarms rang. All screens showed a photo of 10 people. The same 10 from Daxil 4. Below their faces were 3 words: "We are awake." No money was stolen. No files were lost. But the image stayed on screen for 7 minutes. That was long enough. News spread like a storm. The Zorath tried to shut it down, but copies of the image appeared everywhere, on tablets, on walls, even on the side of ships. The 10 had become a symbol. Children asked their parents, "Who are they?" Soldiers asked their captains, "Why did we do this?" And leaders began to ask themselves, "What comes next?" On the mining planet of Velan 3, a giant drill broke in the middle of the night. Workers found the controls frozen. Carved into the machine's metal were the words, 10 for 10,000. The workers stared at it. No one spoke. Every day more little things added up. A door that wouldn't open. A robot that refused to follow commands. A message written in starlight. Each one told a piece of a story. Each one whispered that humans were not finished. Soon some Zorath began to panic. They stopped traveling to human space. They canceled plans. They looked over their shoulders. Some even tried to leave the Dominion. Fear had taken root not from war but from warning. The Zorath tried to show strength. They held parades. They spoke loudly on screens. They said, "We are not afraid." But their voices were shaking. Their hands were not steady. Even the sky felt different. Then came the biggest shock of all. A ship called Zeratan Prime, one of their best warships, sent out a distress signal. It had lost power. Its crew was stuck. When rescue arrived, they found no attack, no enemy ships. But every screen on board said the same thing: "We are already inside." That message was clear. The humans could reach even their strongest places. They didn't need ships. They didn't need armies. They had something better. They had anger that was focused. They had memory that didn't fade. They had the will to wait and the power to act. After that, the Zoreth held a secret meeting. Only the highest leaders came. They sat in a dark room. No lights, no screens, just voices. "What do we do now?" one asked. No one answered at first. Then General Varash spoke. "We end this," he said, "before they end us." The room stayed silent for a long time. Outside in space, a new message appeared on the edge of the Zoreth system. It was carved into a moon using light beams. It said, "Remember Daxil 4. Remember the 10. Remember who watched, and who is still watching." The Zoreth now understood this was not over, and the next part would be worse. The fear was no longer a whisper. It was a shadow that followed every leader, every guard, every worker. It crept through halls. It lived inside screens. It echoed in silence. The humans had not started a war, but they had started something even more powerful. They had made the Zoreth worry. They had made them afraid. And fear, once it begins, is hard to stop. Far away from the stars where the Zoreth lived, Earth was quiet. Cities were still busy and people still worked, but something had changed deep underneath. Hidden from the public eye, the leaders of Earth were meeting. Not in bright buildings or newsrooms, not in front of cameras. These were quiet rooms far underground. Only the most trusted were invited. They did not come to talk, they came to plan. Each person in the room had lost someone. Some had lost family, some had lost friends. Others had lost whole teams or ships. They had pictures in their hands, pictures of the 10. The 10 humans who were taken and killed without a trial. They were not soldiers, they were not spies, they were just people who were working on a mining colony. Now they were gone. The leaders were not here for speeches or tears. They were here to make sure it would never happen again. They sat around a large table, long and made of steel. No names were given. No flags showed what country or group they came from. It did not matter anymore. What mattered was one thing: justice for the 10. A woman named Lynn was the first to speak. She was quiet but strong. She wore a black jacket with no badge. Her voice was steady. "The Zoreth believe we are soft," she said. "They think we are afraid, but they are wrong. We don't need to fight with big ships. We don't need loud battles. We fight with ideas, with skill, with time." Next to her sat a man named Raj. He was an engineer once in charge of power systems in deep space. He had a deep scar across his neck. "They used silence to kill," he said. "We will use silence to build. Let them fear the quiet." Across the room was May, a data expert who had worked in space communications. She had once broken into a signal tower without anyone knowing. "We already have pieces in place," she said. "We've been watching them for years. Now we use what we know." One by one, the others spoke. Some were military, some were scientists, some had no titles at all. They all brought something to the table: codes, maps, faces, and secrets. The plan was not one plan. It was many small ones, each designed to look harmless, but all working together. The first part was information. Earth had been gathering it for a long time: every ship, every base, every trade route, the color of lights on their ships, the shape of their tools, the timing of their meetings. Nothing was too small to notice. Everything was written down. The second part was movement. Tiny ships, almost too small to see, had been floating near Zorath space for months. They did not carry weapons. They carried ears, tiny machines that could listen. They floated in the dark and sent signals home. Every whisper from the Zorath was caught. Every alarm, every worry, Earth did not need to guess. Earth knew. The third part was memory. Humans never forgot Daxil 4, and they would make sure the Zorath never forgot either. Artists created images. Writers wrote short stories. Coders hid messages in games. Pilots drew signs in space dust with their engines. Everywhere the story of the 10 spread, not with noise, not with anger, but with quiet power. Meanwhile, on Earth, teams worked in secret labs. They built programs that could slip into systems without leaving a mark. These programs did not break things. They simply watched, waited. And when the time came, they would act fast, shutting doors, turning off lights, freezing ships. In another part of the world, young hackers trained with old experts. They were taught to move like shadows through networks, not to destroy but to redirect. One small file changed here, one small button pressed there. A traffic system in a Zorath city blinked for half a second. That was a test. No one noticed, but the team smiled. It worked. In deep ocean labs, others worked on tools that could hide inside space dust. Tiny metal balls filled with sensors and smart chips. They floated through trade routes. Some stuck to enemy ships. They sent messages back, where the ships were going, what they were carrying, even what the crew had for lunch. The Zorath never saw them. They were too small. In space, human outposts went dark, but on purpose. They shut off lights and went quiet, pretending to be broken. But under the surface, they were listening. They tracked every Zorath movement. They shared everything with Earth Command. From a quiet desk far from the stars, a young woman named Ava watched their signals. She drank tea and marked each one with care. Across the Earth, the plan grew. It was not just a few people now. Quietly in schools, on farms, in space stations, more joined. Not with guns, but with minds, programmers, mathematicians, pilots, miners. Everyone had a skill and everyone used it. They did not need orders. They remembered the 10. In space labs, scientists built what they called mirrors. These were fake messages that bounced back and forth to confuse the Zorath. One mirror made a ship believe it was being followed. Another made a trade station think it had sent the wrong fuel to 10 other ships. Chaos grew, not fast but slow, like a tide. Earth also reached out to other planets. Quiet talks, secret messages. They asked questions. Have you lost anyone to the Zorath? Did you know about the 10? Many answered, yes. Some sent help. Others gave maps. One gave a list of names, Zorath officers who had lied. Earth remembered those names. In mountain bunkers, people trained in silence, not with shouting but with focus. They learned to walk through systems, not smash them. They learned to speak when no one else could hear. They learned to win without being seen. In the far north, a team built a fake Zorath ship. It looked real, same color, same size, but inside it held cameras, scanners, and tools for listening. It was sent close to a border. When Zorath guards scanned it, they saw what they thought was one of their own. They waved it through. The ship smiled, though it had no mouth. Back on Earth in the deep meeting room, the leaders gathered again. Lin, Raj, May, and the others. "It's time," Lin said. "The web is ready." Raj nodded. "Let them feel what we felt, not with pain but with pressure." May looked at her screen. "The message will begin tonight." They all stood, no cheering, no flags, just purpose. That night 1,000 tiny actions took place. One screen blinked, one file vanished, one ship took the long way home. Each move was small, but together they became something big. The Zoreth did not hear a bomb. They heard nothing. And that silence was loud. The next morning, 10 ships missed their arrival time. A trade network glitched. A general's voice was played backward in a message to his staff. Nothing made sense. Nothing was broken, but everything felt off. The leaders of Earth stayed quiet. They didn't speak to the galaxy. They didn't say, "We are coming." They had already come. And they were not finished. The plan had started and now it was moving. Not fast, not loud, but steady. Like a river under the ice, quiet but full of power. Earth did not send warships. They sent signals. They did not shout in anger. They whispered in code. At first, it seemed like small things. A mining outpost stopped sending updates. No one answered calls. A station that once sold parts to the Zareth suddenly ran out of supplies. Their storage bays were full the day before, then empty, and no one knew how. Then a ship floated near a Zorath border. It sent a message, but not in words. It sent a blinking light, a pattern that meant, "We are still here, we do not forget." The Zorath patrol scanned the ship but found nothing strange. Still, the ship turned and left. No fight, no crash, just a reminder. In another part of space, a satellite that once helped Zorath ships find their way began to give wrong directions. One transport vessel flew in circles for 6 hours. When it landed, the captain was red with shame. He had not done anything wrong, but somehow everything went wrong. He didn't know Earth had taken control of the satellite weeks ago. Next came the trade routes. These were lines of supply that kept the Zarath fed, fueled, and rich. One by one, the routes changed. Cargo ships were told to turn around. Orders were canceled. Some ships flew to empty docks. Others found doors that would not open. The humans did not need weapons. They had something better: control. In the far corner of Zarath space, a small base shut down. The workers thought it was a power error, but when they checked the systems, they found nothing wrong. The lights came back, but only dim. The computers worked, but only slow. One screen kept showing a single number, 10. No one knew what it meant, but the humans knew. 10 lives were lost. This was a message. Zorath leaders began to notice. At first, they did not worry. "It's just broken tech," one said. "Nothing serious." But the problems grew. Soon, whole fleets could not contact each other. A commander tried to call for help, but his voice never reached the next ship. The signal was cut and replaced with silence. On a planet that made ship fuel, the machines stopped. Workers tried to fix them, but every time they pressed a button, the machines blinked and froze. One engineer opened a control panel. Inside, he found a note. It was not written on paper. It was written in light, hidden in code. The message said, "Justice is coming." Far away on Earth, no one smiled. This was not about revenge. This was about stopping a bully. This was about making the galaxy safer. It was not about hate. It was about honor. Some Zorath soldiers began to fear, not because they saw bombs or battles, but because they saw nothing. Nothing made sense. Ships turned back without orders. Tools acted strange. Lights flickered, then stopped. People whispered in halls, "Who is doing this?" But no one had an answer. In the sky above a Zorath colony, a giant cargo ship froze in place. It hovered without power. The crew was safe. But every control on the ship stopped working. Then a screen lit up. It showed the names of the 10 humans who had been killed, one name at a time. Then the screen went dark again. The ship started moving. No damage, no fire, just memory. Other ships began to act strange. One cruiser found its lights blinking in a pattern. The pattern was Morse code, an old Earth language. It said, "Return home or lose your way." The captain had never heard of Morse code, but the meaning was clear. Outposts in space started to go quiet, not destroyed, just silent. The humans did not destroy the places they touched. They made them still. They turned the lights off, closed the doors, and left, like someone placing a hand gently on a loud drum. The Zorath tried to send spies to Earth, but each time the spy vanished. Not killed, just removed. One was found sitting at a bus stop in a small town, unable to remember who he was. Another found herself working in a flower shop, speaking Earth language perfectly, though she had never learned it before. The humans had learned long ago that strength was not always in the fist. Sometimes, strength was in knowing when to hold back. A Zorath general tried to set a trap. He ordered a fake distress call from a supply ship. He wanted humans to answer it so he could catch them. But when he arrived, he found the ship empty. It was real, but the call was not from the ship, it was from Earth. It said only, "You're not the only one who can plan." At a space gate, traffic stopped. Ships could not enter or leave. The gate still looked fine, but the code had changed. It now asked a question, "Do you understand now?" The Zorath had no answer. On one planet, lights in the night sky danced in strange shapes. People came outside to look. The shapes moved slowly and carefully. Then they formed the number 10. Then they vanished. Earth's moves were not just strong, they were smart. Each one reminded the Zorath of what they had done, but not in rage, in calm, quiet warning. Back on Earth, the people watched. They did not cheer. They did not hold parades. Instead, they worked, fixed things, sent help, trained more people, built better systems, because this was not the end. It was the beginning of a longer peace, one built on respect. Children in schools learned about Daxil 4, not to make them angry, but to teach them why peace must be protected. Artists painted murals of the 10. One picture showed the 10 holding hands in space, with stars around them. Another showed a Zorath commander dropping his weapon, his eyes full of shame. Even some Zorath began to change. One young officer left his post and flew to a neutral zone. He asked for peace. He said, "We were wrong. The humans did not fight like us. They fought better. They made us see." Outposts kept falling not from war but from choice. Guards left. Workers walked away. They did not want to be part of something cruel. Earth had not forced them. Earth had shown them. Back in the stars, one Zoreth ship went dark for 5 minutes. When it came back online, every screen showed a poem. It had only 10 lines. Each line started with a name. The last line said, "They are gone, but we remain." This was the human way. Quiet, strong, not to destroy, but to change. The Zoreth had expected battles, but battles never came. They expected guns. But Earth sent something else: truth, honor, and calm strength. And slowly, like ice melting under the sun, the Zoreth began to crack.